How's everybody doing? Good. I'm James Suzanne. I'm one of the co-chairs for the Pierre Poilievre campaign right here in Manitoba. And this is the first time we tried one of these casting ballot events in the morning. So we're just trying to figure out how many people in Winnipeg are actually morning people.
Here we are.
So here we are. The morning people are all here. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you for buying your membership for Pierre, and thank you for being here to cast your ballot. The most important thing that we're doing right now is getting these ballots in the mail or delivered here at these ballot casting events, because memberships are important, but your vote is even more important. Because if we want Pierre to be our next leader, to beat Justin Trudeau and be our Prime Minister, we have to vote for him now. So make sure you're telling your family, your friends, everybody else that you know that are a member of the Conservative Party of Canada, that they have to get their ballots in the mail sooner than later. Do we trust Canada Post to get them there before September 6th?
No.
That's why we're doing these ballot casting events. It can take 2 weeks for a third-class mail to get from Manitoba to Ottawa. And so that's why it's important we get these ballots here today, as well as maybe have to go out there, run around, pick them up, get them delivered into a central collection point that we're going to have here in Winnipeg and across Manitoba, so that we can make sure the ballots get couriered to Ottawa and that they get counted on September 10th.
Just send them with the truckers. They'll be there overnight.
That'll be a long drive, but I'm sure they can. Somebody will do it. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I get to introduce my friend, the person who is standing up for freedom, the person who will unite our party, and the person who's going to unite this country. Here is Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah, Pierre! Go, Pierre, go!
This wonderful prairie welcome. Being that we are in the prairies, I'll start with a farming analogy. My friend who's a rancher, farmer, and a great fighter for the people of this province would appreciate, which is this. When you sell memberships for a Conservative leadership, it's like planting the crop. But you have to harvest the crop, right? Because if you leave it out in the field, it's not worth anything. The only way to harvest the crop in a leadership race is to get everyone to vote. And that's what you're doing today. Give yourselves a round of applause. And we're not going to procrastinate. As the great Abraham Lincoln said, leave nothing for tomorrow that can be done today. And that's why we're getting our ballots in now. We don't want to leave it for chance. So tell everybody you know who's got their membership that they have to get out and vote. You know, to get out to vote is always the most dramatic part. I remember back in the 2015 election when there was a big red wave coming, and I was running for re-election in a red Liberal city, Ottawa, a small government Conservative in a big government town. Never easy to win, and especially hard. The day of the election, it was about 9:23. Polls close at 9:30. I'm begging people to get out and vote. There's going to be razor thin margin. I went up to this lady's door and I said, have you voted? She said, no, I'm too old. I said, what do you mean you're too old? There's no law on how old you can be to vote. And she said, I can't drive. I said, I'll drive you. She said, my husband can't make it down the stairs. I said, I'll carry him. She said, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. She closed the door and I walked off into that rainy night. I got onto the street and I thought, there's about 6 minutes left. The only person I'm going to get to the polls is this lady and her husband. So I went right back and I said, ma'am, soldiers died so that you could vote. And she said, oh, all right. So we got her husband down the stairs. We got them out through the rain. And we got them into the car. I couldn't fold up her husband's walker. And so we couldn't fit it into the vehicle, so I had to monkey around with it for a few seconds, got it in there. Then there wasn't room for me to get into the vehicle. So they tore off without me to go to the voting station. I stood there in the rain and waited, and they got back, and I asked my volunteer, did they get a chance to vote? He said, we got there. The door was closed at 9:29, even though we had 1 more minute. So I banged on the door. They came, and I insisted that these people have the right to vote because they arrived in time. So they did cast their ballot, and I was so relieved. And as the lady and her husband walked back into the house, I took her by the hand. I said, "Ma'am, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know how hard it was for you to do that." And she said, "And who are you again?" I have no idea who she voted for, but she did vote. And you know what? We signed up 311,958 new members just to support my campaign in this conservative. Record-smashing event. And I think it's because people feel like they've lost control of their lives in this country, don't they?
That's right.
You know? Big bossy government has taken their money and told them what to do. It has used nasty vaccine mandates to isolate people who've made a different medical decision. The Prime Minister has called people names if they disagree with him. We now learn that there was never any science behind these mandates, that after the Prime Minister announced them, his officials had to scramble to come up with a medical or scientific justification because there wasn't one. Now we see him engaging in COVID hypocrisy, unmasked hypocrisy, right? Here he is landing for his Caribbean vacation, getting off the plane, no mask on, even though he's in tight quarters on a smaller plane with staff and family members and pilots who are all around him. He claimed that that was deadly dangerous for people to do, but not for him, apparently. Apparently, when you're a princely prime minister, you don't, the COVID does not transmit, right? Well, of course, nothing about this prime minister's approach has been rooted in science. Everything has been about dividing, distracting, and controlling the people. People feel like they've lost control of their economic lives, with 35-year-olds stuck living in their parents' basements as house prices have gone up 50%. Those people who do have houses wonder how they're going to pay their mortgages now that interest rates have gone through the roof and are rising still. And then there's the single mom who's putting water in her kid's milk because she can't afford groceries. 4 and 5 families have cut back on their diets because of the high cost of food. We have the miner in Timmins, Ontario, who told me that he couldn't afford to gas up his truck to drive to see his parents in Thunder Bay one last time as they were on their deathbeds. These are the sacrifices that Canadians are making while the Prime Minister burns more fuel on his private jet than an entire trucker convoy would have burned to drive from Regina all the way to Ottawa. He flew every day last month except 11 of them. This is someone who's deadly concerned about how bad it is to use fossil fuels. And what powers that airplane it gets? Does anybody know? Electricity? Is it rainbows? Is it pixie dust?
Jet fuel.
It's jet fuel. Somebody got it right there. I don't know if he knows that. All right, but he thinks that you should pay more tax for the crime of driving to work in the morning or taking your kids to hockey on the weekend. His carbon tax is scheduled to go up by 200% between now and 2030. And he wants to phase out our entire energy sector. Ladies and gentlemen, this is nothing more than an attack on the working people of this nation. I will repeal the carbon tax and remove the gatekeepers so we can develop our $500 billion of deficit spending that has bid up the price of goods and services, leading to 40-year highs in inflation. More money chasing fewer goods always means higher prices. Inflationary taxes have driven up the cost of businesses and farmers to produce those same goods we require. The more he spends, the more things cost. It is just inflation that we are all now paying. Now we're going to reverse those policies. The Poilievre government's going to get rid of wasteful spending. We're going to tackle out-of-control bureaucracy. We're going to eliminate the $35 billion infrastructure bank that exists only to guarantee the profits of large, well-connected construction companies. We're going to save $1 billion by defunding the CBC.
Yeah!
The nation the way that you run the finances of your household. When you increase $1 of spending in one place, you find $1 of savings somewhere else to pay for it. Not government. They just pile $1 on top of another, on top of another, and pass the bill on in higher taxes, inflation, and debt. So I will pass the pay-as-you-go law. Very simple. Every time government brings in $1 of new spending, we're required by law to find $1 of savings to pay for it. Because you've been pinching your pennies for long enough, it's time for government to start pinching pennies too. Ladies and gentlemen, cash. We're going to create more of what cash buys. We'll grow more food, build more houses, and produce more Canadian energy right here in this country. It's the gatekeepers that are standing in the way, of course. You know, we have the fewest houses per capita of any G7 country, even though we have the most land to build on. Why? Well, because government gatekeepers delay permits and drive up the cost of getting home building approvals. And of course, that means fewer houses at higher prices, and the poorest people suffer the most. That's why our young, our immigrants, our First Nations people have a hard time getting a place to live. So I'm going to link the number of infrastructure dollars that big cities get to the number of houses they allow to be completed. I'm going to require that every single federally funded transit station have pre-approved permits for high-density housing around it, so our young people can live right next to a transit station without needing a car. I'm going to sell off 15% of our federal government buildings, 37,000 of them, many of them underutilized before COVID and now absolutely empty because folks are working from home. We'll sell them off, convert those into housing, and it just warms my heart to think of the beautiful family rolling up in their U-Haul to empty out their belongings into their wonderful new home in the former headquarters of the CBC.